pals, I'm here today to talk about the books I have on pre-order for the last few months of the year. Now, I always find that kind of November, December isn't a great time for new releases, new bookish releases that is. I mean, I guess there's lots of children's books that come out around that time and a lot of sort of coffee table, like exciting cookbooks that come out around that time because of the Christmas build-up, I think. But I find that August to October is still a good period, and there are quite a few books I'm really excited about in these few months, and so I thought I would talk about them here. Now, this first one I'm going to cheat slightly because this actually came out on the 13th of August, but I wanted to make sure to mention it because I think a lot of you will like the sound of it. And that is You're Embarrassing Yourself, Stories of Love, Lust and Movies by Desiree Akhavan. So I love this title and this cover, I just think it is great, and I love the colour combination of the pink with the red. Desiree Akhavan is a writer-director. She actually directed the adaptation of The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which is a YA book and film I really enjoyed. She's also written and directed the Bisexual and Appropriate Behaviour, which is a film I have to watch. I think she may even be the lead actor in Appropriate Behaviour, although I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I'm really interested in her career, and this is an essay collection. And it says, when it comes to shame, Desiree knows what she's talking about, whether it's winning the title of the ugliest girl at her high school, acquiescing to the nose job she was lovingly forced into by her Iranian parents, or losing her virginity to a cokehead she met in a support group for cutters. In You're Embarrassing Yourself, Akhavan goes to the rawest places, the lifelong struggle to be at peace in one's body, the search for home as the child of immigrants, the anxious underbelly of artistic ambition, in pursuit of wisdom, catharsis and lols. The result is a collection that captures the pathetic lows and euphoric highs of our youth and how to survive them. Yeah, I think that all sounds really interesting, even if she wasn't like a woman kind of involved in the movies. I find that all that really interesting, but I'm particularly interested because of her kind of artistic background. So that's one I'm really looking forward to reading. And the next one is one I've heard so many people talk about. I've seen a lot of people show advanced readers copies of this one, and that is Liars by Sarah Manguso. This is her 9th book, I think, and I've heard of one of her previous books, which I think was quite buzzy when it came out, and that's Very Cold People. I felt a bit on the fence about this one because I felt that based on the description, it could either be something I would really love in that kind of like dark, kind of thrilling vibe, or it could go the other angle and have that kind of detached, cold feeling to the writing, which is something I really don't enjoy. The thing that's made me feel like there's a stronger chance I'll like it is that Miranda Cowley Heller, who is the author of a book I loved called The Paper Palace, has blurbed it and written an unflinchingly true and honest depiction of a marriage turning from gold to dust. And I think that was something, that was really examined in The Paper Palace, this marriage kind of falling to pieces. And so yeah, the fact that she's blurbed it and enjoyed it sort of spurred me on. So yeah, the premise of this is that we follow this woman who is an artist in her own right, and she marries a man who's also an artist. I think he's perhaps a filmmaker. And yeah, she has these dreams of living this life where they both continue with their art. And then one day she turns around and realises that she is a wife and a mother, and she's worked really hard all these years and sort of given up herself and given up her own art. And then her husband leaves her. And so this is about the rage she feels from that point and the decision she makes. And I think this is supposed to be quite sort of blistering and twisted. And I think it sounds quite intriguing. And then on the 29th of August, we have 3 books coming out that I'm very excited about. This first one I've pre-ordered. The second one I've reserved at the library. And the third one I've asked my library to buy. So hopefully they'll say yes. So the first one is my second most anticipated release of the year. My first most anticipated release of the year was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which came out in July. I absolutely adored it. I've reviewed it and I'll link that above in case you're interested. So yeah, my second most anticipated release of the year was from another favourite author, and that is Sarah Moss, and it is My Good Bright Wolf. This is a memoir. I've read all of this author's work, and there's a couple that I think were like fine, but the rest of them I absolutely loved. In particular, I really enjoyed her previous memoir, which was about a year her family spent living in Iceland. This memoir is about her relationship with her childhood and how the kind of control and ways of kind of like minimising herself and her pain as a girl and a woman led to her having anorexia as a teenager and have really just affected the way she moves through the world. It says it navigates contested memories of childhood, which is something I find really interesting, the idea of memories and whether some memories we have are in part created by the stories other people have told us, or memories that are shaped from like moments that happened later in our lives, how I find it really difficult to know that we can't kind of trust our own memories. That's something I really enjoy seeing examined. The chorus of relentless and controlling voices that dogged Sarah's every thought, and the writing and books in which she could run free. Beautiful, audacious, moving, and very funny, this memoir is a remarkable exercise in the way a brain turns on itself and then finds a way out. That and her writing coupled together, just think this will be one of my favourite books of the year. Cannot wait. The next book has a very beautiful cover, and that is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers. I love how this is made to look like one of those like tea tins or biscuit tins. I previously read from this author Small Pleasures, which was her most recent book before this one, and I really enjoyed it. I then went and read one of her earlier books called Learning to Swim and really didn't enjoy it. So she's one of those authors where I've decided to continue to read what she brings out in future, but not to read some of her older books, because the older one I read did feel a bit dated in terms of the way it dealt with relationships between women and men and also with women's bodies. But this one sounds really good. And if you don't know, her previous book and this one are those type of historical fiction set in England that have kind of a mystery at the heart of them, but ultimately feel kind of tender and cosy, but also sad. And yeah, this one sounds really interesting. This one's set in Croydon in 1964. We follow a woman who is in her 30s, and she is an art therapist in a psychiatric hospital where she has been having a long love affair with one of the charismatic married doctors. One spring afternoon, they receive a call about a disturbance from a derelict house not far from Helen's home, and they find a 37-year-old man with a beard down to his waist who's been discovered with his elderly aunt. It is clear he has been shut up in the house for decades, but when it emerges that he is a talented artist, Helen is determined to discover his story. It looks at the different ways we can be confined, how ordinary lives are built of delicate layers of experience, the joy of freedom, and the transformative power of kindness. So I feel like this will be like a really cosy read, and it'll be a book I'll probably sit and read across a couple of afternoons with some tea and cake. The next one is I Died at Fallow Hall by Bunny Burke Patel. And this is intriguing because I don't know, like vibe-wise, if this one's going to lean more kind of cosy mystery or more kind of serious. And I think the themes it examines sounds like it might be more serious, but some of the other descriptions sound more cosy. And what I mean by that is we follow a woman who is to a remote Cotswold cottage to become a gardener and trying to live this really stripped back life and live kind of anonymously, which I think all sounds kind of cosy. But when she's digging up a vegetable bed, she finds some bones, and a detective comes in, Detective Inspector Hitesh Mystery, who has his own reasons for a new start in this village. And it says, as threats to Anna and her new life grow closer, she and D.I. Mystery will find that this murder is inextricably bound up with issues of gender, family, community, race, and British identity itself, all as relevant in decades past as they are to Anna today. Then we've got two books coming out on September the 3rd. One of them I'm so excited about, and I can't really talk much about this because this is a sequel to a previous book, and if I read the blurb it will completely spoil the previous one, but the new one is Where the Forest Meets the River by Shannon Bowring, and this is a follow-on from The Road to Dalton by the same author, obviously. I listened to The Road to Dalton earlier this year on audio and I absolutely loved it. I would highly recommend it. The premise of The Road to Dalton is that we focused on this small town in Maine called Dalton, and it's about the lives of, I think, 6 people who are living in this town in the 90s and have all these kind of secrets and heartbreaks that are kind of willfully ignored by the community. And yeah, you kind of find out about each of them and the others through each of their stories. I found it just beautifully written and kind of examined. I could completely picture everything. I was completely compelled by everyone's story, and I just love the atmosphere of this town. And when I finished it, it felt like a complete story in that I hadn't been left hanging, but I also felt like I'd happily spend more time with all of these characters. So when I found out that there was a novel following on in which you revisit some of these characters and revisit Dalton, I was very, very happy. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't yet, you read The Road to Dalton, so that on September the 3rd you can read Where the Forest Meets the River. Then we have Misinterpretation by, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Ledia Schauger. I hope I've said that right. I'm going to read you the blurb of this one because it's a little bit complicated. In present-day New York City, an Albanian interpreter reluctantly agrees to work with Alfred, a Kosovar torture survivor, during his therapy sessions. Despite her husband's caution, she soon becomes entangled in her client's struggles. Alfred's dreams stir out her own buried memories, and an impulsive attempt to help a Kurdish poet leads to a risky encounter and a reckless plan. As ill-fated decisions stack up, jeopardising the nameless narrator's marriage and mental health, she takes a spontaneous trip to reunite with her mother in Albania, where her life in the US is put into stark relief. When she returns to face the consequences of her actions, she must question what is real and what is not. Ruminative and propulsive, this interrogates the darker legacies of family and country and the boundary between compassion and self-preservation. Yeah, I think that sounds really intriguing. I don't quite know what to expect from this one. I think this is a debut novel, but I'm interested in this and I think it sounds quite different to other stories I've read before. And on the 12th of September, we have 2 books coming out from authors I've previously read and enjoyed books from. The first one is The Glassmaker by Tracy Chevalier. This will be quite a big buzzy release, I think, and this is a 400-page historical epic. It opens in 1486 in Venice, and we follow a family of glassmakers. In particular, we follow one of the women in the family who works secretly on the glass because women aren't supposed to work with glass. But it says, skipping like a stone through the centuries, we follow this woman as she hones her craft through war and plague, tragedy and triumph, love and loss. It says, this is a vivid, invented, spellbinding portrait of a woman, a family and a city that are as everlasting as their glass. And what I think Tracy Chevalier does quite well, I've read a couple of her books now, is she picks a kind of field of study or an art form, and then she focuses her characters around that, and she really well researches that topic. So in this one, it being glassmaking. Yeah, so I'm quite intrigued. This isn't necessarily a historical period or a location that I would have chosen to read a book set about, but I am intrigued by it being about glassmaking. And like I said, I've read a couple of her books and really enjoyed them. The next one is a children's book, and that is Ghost Lines by Katya Balin. I previously read October from this author and yeah, really enjoyed it. I think she writes really beautiful, kind of cosy children's books. And this one is set on an island called Youre. It says it is a seaside story of friendship, community and discovering what it means to carry home in your heart. And it says that it's a different kind of ghost that worries our protagonist. The ghost that's been following her now since her brother left the island. Yeah, so I think this sounds delightful. It says there's going to be like some boat trips and hidden ghosts and seal viewings and all those things. And yeah, October was just really cosy, another kind of tea and cake book. So I'll definitely be borrowing this one from the library as well. Then obviously I couldn't do this video without mentioning that Sally Rooney has a new book coming out. I haven't double checked how you're supposed to say this. Intermezzo? Don't know, is that correct? Now, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not super excited about this. I know loads of people are like over the moon excited, cannot wait, want to get hold of early copies of this one. I've read all Sally Rooney's books, and initially I really enjoyed Conversations with Friends and Normal People. Although, yeah, I do kind of wonder as I get older if I would enjoy them quite as much, because I find that something I find really frustrating in any type of media I watch is when people are in a relationship just won't communicate with each other and like could quite easily say something and just don't, and that is kind of a plot device she uses quite heavily in her books. So that's kind of one thing, but I did love those books when I read them. But the other thing is that I don't know how excited I am about this premise, because this one's actually about 2 men who are brothers, and I think one or both of them are involved in some like big chess tournament. So I don't know, I'm less excited to read a book that she's written about men, and I don't know, like I love the Queen's Gambit, the TV show, but chess is a bit boring, isn't it? So yeah, I will definitely read this one, but I'm not someone who's like 100% going to read it on the day of release, so we'll see. Then maybe an odd one for me to include, but I stumbled across this one, and this is just completely not the type of book I would like to have, and that is Banging Beans by Sarah Doig. This has 60 vibrant vegan meals powered by beans. I love beans in meals. John and I eat a little bit of like meat substitutes, but mainly I love to eat beans and veg and tofu, and so yeah, I just love the idea of a cookbook all based around beans. An example of some of the recipes that are going to be in here This one sounds amazing. Smoky chipotle beans with zesty corn crema. Miso mac and beans with chili crumb. Orange gochujang noodles with tofu and edamame. Amazing. All of these sounds just delicious. So yeah, that is definitely one I want. I like the idea of it just having like 60 recipes in. So like actually feeling like a book that I could maybe cook my way through, which is something I've always liked the idea of but I've never done. So again, I tend to, if you're someone who like is a bit scared off by cookbooks because they're quite pricey, I borrow a lot of cookbooks from my library, and then if I flick through them and think actually these are recipes I would actually do, like they don't look too difficult or they don't look too expensive, then if I think I'll use it, I'd buy it or ask for it for a birthday or something. I never just get a cookbook straight out without having sort of given it a test run. So I will check if my library's buying this one, and if not, I'll ask them to, and then I will borrow it and give it a go and hopefully eat some delicious beanie recipes. Then on the 10th of October we have The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. This is maybe quite odd because I don't usually read kind of like mystery thriller type things, and I haven't read The Girl on the Train, but I did read Into the Water by this author when it came out many years ago, and I remember nothing about the plot, but I remember that it had a quite atmospheric writing style and I was kind of surprised by it. And look, if any book is set on an island in a kind of lonely cottage and there's a mystery, then I pretty much want to read it, and that's exactly what this book is. This is set on an island off the coast of Scotland. There's one house, one inhabitant, and only one way out, and the island is for 12 hours of the day it can't be reached from the mainland. And it says that years ago an artist lived in this cottage and her notoriously unfaithful husband disappeared 20 years before. We now have this woman living there called Grace, but when a shocking discovery is made in an art gallery far away in London, a visitor comes calling and the secrets of the island threaten to emerge. So yeah, I think that sounds really intriguing. It's getting really good advance praise, so I will be getting myself in the queue at the library for this one. But ultimately, on November the 7th, we have She's Always Hungry by Liza Clark. Now, a few things to say about this one. Firstly, lovely surprise, like it's completely unexpected when an author has a book out 1 year to find out a few months later that they're going to be having another book come out the next year. So, was so happy to see that. Secondly, as soon as I heard the title was released ages ago without the cover, I was like, just absolutely perfect title, really fits Liza Clark's writing style. Thirdly, they released this banging cover. I mean, just amazing. Again, pink and red go so well together, love it. And I love the old bathroom and the creepy hand, just think it all looks amazing. Haven't actually read the blurb because, to be honest, I've read both her novels, think she's a great writer, and will just sort of continue to read anything she writes, but for the sake of the video, let's have a look. It says, visceral, speculative body horror. A teenager longs for perfect skin. A scientist tends to fragile alien flora. A young man takes the night into his own hands. Each of these characters has a desperate desire. Can any of them be sated? Unsettling, revelatory, and laced with her signature dark humour, Liza Clark's debut short story collection plumbs the depths of that most basic human feeling, hunger. Yeah, I think that sounds great. Can't wait to dive into this one. And then lastly on my list, on the 12th of November, we have The Burrow by Melanie Cheng. I'm going to be honest, saw this cover, was immediately pulled in. But yeah, I really like the sound of this one. This is a family drama that is told from the perspectives of 4 members of the Lee family. They live in an Australian suburb and they are navigating grief after the youngest sister in the family died in a quite horrific way. None of them talk about it, they're all completely repressing how they feel. And they decide to adopt a rabbit in the hopes of bringing much needed cheer to their home. But there's a really violent home invasion and it really shifts the way they're all living, and they are forced to confront the terrible circumstances surrounding this loss. It says, atmospheric and tautly lyrical, this slim novel, it's only 200 pages, which is very short for a family drama, I think, brings together 4 distinct perspectives, one wide-eyed rabbit to reveal the enormity of loss, long-buried secrets, and how to survive in a newfound world after the ultimate tragedy. So yeah, all sounds really interesting. I've read a couple of books now where there is a bunny as a character and enjoyed them both. And in fact, I think a couple of them have been from this same publisher, which is Tin House. So maybe someone over at Tin House really likes rabbits. And yeah, I haven't read many family dramas set in Australia, so like the sound of this. Always love a novel from multiple perspectives. and yeah, I just think it sounds great. So those are all the books I'm planning to get hold of copies of. I'll either be pre-ordering them, probably the ones that are published outside the UK I'll have to pre-order my own copies of. If not, I'll be borrowing them from the library, and also I will see which ones I can source via audio on Everand, which is an app I highly recommend. I think particularly if you're not based in North America, it's really good for having lots of indie publishers, especially in North America. And so yeah, if you can't source a book in the UK, there's a good chance that Everand will have it as an e-copy or an audio copy. So I really love them for that. So I'll be trying to find some of these books on there. So do let me know if you have any of these books on your pre-order lists, if you have any books on your list that I haven't mentioned here. I would love to hear about some more books. And I'm always intrigued to know if your reading changes with the seasons. We had a couple of days here recently where it got like a little bit colder and there was a bit of a breeze, and I felt so wildly like happy, like so much happier. And I was already thinking about all the stews and soups I can eat and all the pumpkin spice things I can make and just all the cozy moody books I can read. So cannot wait. Have some summer reading left to do, which I'm very excited about, but yeah, very much looking forward to autumn winter reading season. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!